titled Twisted Fairy Tales, A Deal of Shadows and Desire. In the kingdom of far, far away, tales of Rumpelstiltskin's trickery were whispered in hushed tones. He was a master of deals, and those who crossed his path often found themselves ensnared by his cunning. You, YN, never imagined you'd be one of them. One stormy night, desperate to save your family from a crippling debt, you sought out the notorious dealmaker. His carriage, looming and mysterious, appeared before you as if summoned by your despair. Taking a deep breath, you knocked on the door. "Enter," came the smooth, velvety voice of Rumpelstiltskin. You stepped inside, and there he was, with his sharp, calculating eyes and a smirk that promised both danger and intrigue. "What brings you to my humble abode, YN?" he asked, already aware of your plight. You explained your situation, your voice trembling with desperation. Rumpelstiltskin listened, his expression unreadable. "I can help you," he said finally, "but everything comes with a price." "What do you want?" you asked, dreading the answer. He handed you a scroll, a contract that seemed to shimmer with dark magic. "Sign this and your family's debt will be erased. In return, you belong to me for 1 year." Your heart pounded as you read the terms. It was a devil's bargain, but what choice did you have? With a trembling hand, you signed your name. The first few weeks were a nightmare. Rumpelstiltskin was demanding, and his tasks often left you exhausted. You resented him, hated him for the control he wielded over you. He reveled in your discomfort, pushing you to your limits, both physically and mentally. But beneath his harsh exterior, there was something else. In rare, unguarded moments, you glimpsed a vulnerability, a loneliness that mirrored your own. It was during these moments that you felt your resolve waver. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, you found yourself in his chambers. Rumpelstiltskin looked at you, his eyes softer than usual. "Why do you fight me so, YN?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. "Because I'm not your puppet," you replied, your voice shaking with a mix of anger and something else, something you couldn't quite name. He stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You are more than that to me. Can't you see?" Before you could respond, he closed the distance between you, his lips capturing yours in a kiss that was both fierce and tender. Your resistance crumbled, and you kissed him back, the contract binding you fading into the background. As the months passed, your feelings for Rumpelstiltskin grew more complex. You still hated his arrogance, his manipulative nature, but you couldn't deny the magnetic pull between you. It was a twisted, consuming passion that left you breathless. He began to show you a gentler side, a side that cared for you in ways you hadn't expected. He became your protector, your confidant, and eventually, your lover. The lines between captor and captive blurred until you could no longer distinguish them. One night, as you lay in his arms, Rumpelstiltskin whispered, "I've waited for someone like you for so long, YN." You looked into his eyes, seeing the depth of his emotion. "I'm here," you replied softly, realizing that somewhere along the way, you had fallen for him. The fire crackled warmly in Rumpelstiltskin's chamber, casting flickering shadows on the walls. You sat on a plush rug by the hearth, the warmth of the flames seeping into your skin. Rumpelstiltskin joined you, Rumpelstiltskin so close that his knee brushed against yours. His fingers, usually so adept at crafting deals and weaving spells, now traced delicate patterns on your arm. Each touch sent a shiver through you, a reminder of the power he held over your heart. His eyes, intense and focused, never left yours. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice a hushed whisper. You nodded, your breath hitching as his hand moved to cup your cheek. The tenderness in his touch was a stark contrast to the man you had first met. Leaning in, he pressed his forehead against yours, a sigh escaping his lips. "Good," he murmured, "because I am utterly captivated by you, YN." Your heart raced, a mix of fear and excitement. Rumpelstiltskin's thumb brushed over your lower lip, and your eyelids fluttered shut. The tension between you was palpable, an electric current that seemed to bind you closer. When his lips finally met yours, it was like a floodgate opening. The kiss was deep, exploring as if he wanted to memorize every contour of your mouth. You responded with equal fervor, your hands tangling in his hair. The world outside his chamber ceased to exist. There was only the two of you, entwined in a moment of pure, unfiltered desire. Rumpelstiltskin pulled away just enough to rest his forehead against yours once more, his breath ragged. "You're mine, YN," he whispered, his voice a promise and a plea. "And you're mine," you replied, your voice barely audible, but filled with conviction. One evening, the tension between you reached a new height. You were in Rumpelstiltskin's private study, the air thick with the scent of ancient parchment and ink. He watched you with an intensity that made your pulse quicken. "Do you know what you mean to me?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. You shook your head, unable to find your voice. Rumpelstiltskin moved closer, his presence overwhelming. He cupped your chin, forcing you to meet his gaze. "I own you, baby girl," he said, his tone dark and possessive. "And you'll do what I want." A shiver ran down your spine at his words. There was an undeniable thrill in his dominance, a heady mix of fear and desire that left you breathless. Without breaking eye contact, Rumpelstiltskin called out, "Wolfie, bring me my dominant wig." You blinked in confusion as the big bad wolf, who served as one of Rumpelstiltskin's minions, entered the room carrying a striking wig. It was a symbol of his role as a master manipulator and the power he held. Wolfie handed it over with a knowing smirk. "Here you go, boss." Rumpelstiltskin donned the wig, transforming before your eyes into a figure of absolute authority. He turned back to you, his gaze even more intense. "You belong to me, and tonight you will understand what that truly means." Your heart raced as you nodded, submitting to the force of his will. The line between fear and longing blurred, and in that moment you knew you were his completely. In the days that followed, your relationship with Rumpelstiltskin deepened. His dominance became a source of comfort, a guiding force in the chaos of your new life. And as you surrendered to his control, you found a strange and powerful love that bound you together in ways you had never imagined.